The Romano mansion sat on the hill like a silent warning, tall, polished, and perfect on the outside, but hollow where a home should have been. Its marble floors reflected light like ice, and every corridor felt wide enough to echo a heart that never learned how to beat. And tonight, those halls were trembling. Luca Romano, the Mafia boss's only son, stormed through the mansion with fire in his eyes and chaos in his hands. He wasn't walking. He was tearing through the place like a storm that finally broke free. A chair toppled behind him. A glass shattered under his feet. A priceless vase exploded against the wall after he slammed it with everything he had. He didn't care. Or maybe he cared too much. His chest was tight, his hands were shaking, and his breath came in quick, sharp bursts. This wasn't the rage the guards whispered about. This wasn't the temper everyone feared. This was something rawer, something that hurt. And nobody dared to step in. In the corner of the hall, two bodyguards pressed themselves back against the wall, eyes wide, unsure whether to intervene or just let the boy destroy whatever was left of his sanity. Everyone in the mansion knew the rule. When the boss's son lost control, you stayed out of his way. Anyone who didn't paid for it. But as Luca slammed his fist against a marble pillar, sending pain shooting up his arm, someone did step forward. At the far end of the hallway, holding a basket of freshly folded laundry, stood Ms. Althea Johnson, the mansion's black maid. Older, soft-spoken, unnoticed by most of the house, but never blind to what people carried inside. She didn't flinch when Luca shouted. She didn't back away when he grabbed another object to hurl across the room. She didn't even shift her feet. She just watched him. Watched the tremble in his jaw. Watched the fear buried under his fury. Watched a boy drowning in emotions he had never been taught to survive. Then she did something nobody else in that house would ever dare. She took a single, steady step toward him. And in that moment, the entire mansion seemed to freeze. Because what they didn't know would change everything. The Romano mansion didn't wake up with the sun. It woke up with tension, with unspoken rules, with the kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful. It felt controlled. Every hallway was polished, every door guarded, every voice measured. Nothing moved freely inside that house, not even the people who lived in it. And at the center of it all was Luca Romano, the heir who never felt like a son. From the outside, he looked like privilege carved into a teenage body. Designer clothes, private tutors, guards who followed his every step. But inside, he was a boy built on fractures. Raised in rooms where love was absent, where meals were eaten alone, where the only warmth he knew came from the sunlight sneaking past the heavy curtains. Some people grow up spoiled. Luca grew up starved. He learned early that the mansion wasn't a home. It was a kingdom of fear, and his father, Dante Romano, ruled it like a man who trusted no one, least of all his own child. Dante was a legend in the underworld, the kind of man people spoke about in whispers. Sharp eyes, hard jaw, heart locked behind steel walls. He knew how to crush threats, but he never learned how to hold his son. To the city, he was a boss. To Luca, he was a stranger with his face. Every time Luca tried to reach for him, Dante answered with distance. Every time Luca showed emotion, Dante called it weakness. And every time the boy asked about his mother, Dante changed the subject or walked away completely. So Luca stopped asking, stopped hoping, stopped feeling safe. The anger that lived in him wasn't the anger of a spoiled kid. It was the anger of a child who grew up believing he wasn't worth softness. A child who believed the world took his mother because of him, because he wasn't enough, because he couldn't protect her. But there was one person in that mansion who saw past the anger. Ms. Althea Johnson moved through the house with quiet steps and observant eyes, a black woman whose presence seemed too gentle for a place like the Romano estate. She worked in the shadows, folding laundry, cleaning rooms, picking up the broken things Luca left behind during his outbursts. But she didn't just clean up objects. She studied the boy behind the destruction. She noticed the hesitation before he threw something, the way his shoulders trembled afterward, the way he avoided eye contact not out of disrespect, but out of shame. Most of the staff overlooked her. Some envied her because Luca didn't shout at her the way he shouted at them. Others whispered that she didn't belong, a black woman working in a world of powerful white men who measured worth by obedience, not dignity. But Ms. Johnson didn't bend to their stares. She lived a life where she'd already lost the one thing that mattered most, her own son. A boy taken by a world that didn't care about black children, a system that punished them before it ever protected them. Her grief lived inside her quietly, tucked behind her kindness, but it shaped the way she saw Luca. She recognized his silence. She recognized his pain. She recognized the way he was falling. And maybe that was why she stayed. Not for the paycheck, not for the mansion, but because she saw a hurting boy who reminded her of someone she'd loved too deeply and lost too soon. Luca never admitted it, but he noticed her too. He noticed that she walked slowly, never rushing. He noticed that she spoke softly, even when others raised their voices. He noticed that she didn't look at him with fear, but with patience. And patience was something he'd never been given. Still, their connection remained silent, unspoken, fragile. Luca was trapped inside his emotions, and Ms. Johnson was careful not to step into spaces he wasn't ready to open. But she watched him, and he felt it, and somewhere deep inside he didn't hate being seen. Everything remained contained, held together by silence and routine until the night that shifted everything. Luca walked past his father's office and heard something he wasn't meant to hear. A name, a truth, a revelation that snapped the final thread holding him together. His mother's death hadn't been an accident. Someone was responsible, and his father had known the truth all along. Luca froze in the hallway, the air disappearing from his lungs. The world he'd built inside himself, a world made of assumptions, coping mechanisms, and unanswered questions, cracked violently. All the loneliness, all the guilt, all the confusion surged upward like a wave. And the mansion felt that wave coming. Because when Luca finally stepped away from that door, there was no calm left in him. Only betrayal. Only grief. Only fire. The storm that had been growing silently inside him for years had finally found a way out. And Ms. Johnson, she sensed it. Something deep in her spirit told her that this wasn't the kind of storm you step away from. This was the kind you walk toward. Luca didn't remember how long he stood outside his father's office, only that his heart thudded so loudly he could barely hear the rest of the conversation. The voices inside were low, tense, dangerous. Not the business talk he'd grown used to hearing through that thick wooden door. It was different. Sharper. Personal. He resurfaced, one of Dante's men murmured. Dante's reply came cold and ruthless. Then we finish what should have been finished years ago. Luca's hand pressed against the wall to steady himself, breath catching in his throat. He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. The words felt like knives sliding between his ribs. Years ago. Finish. His mother's name was whispered next, and the world around him seemed to vanish completely. He'd spent his entire life believing she died in an accident, something tragic, something awful, but something blameless. And every time he'd tried to ask questions, Dante shut him down with the kind of silence that felt like a slammed door. But now he knew. She didn't die by chance. Someone took her. Someone hurt her. Someone left him motherless because of decisions made in this house. And his father, the only parent he had left, had known all along. Luca didn't realize his fingers were shaking until he saw them trembling against his jeans. Something hot surged inside him, rising from his stomach into his chest, burning its way up his throat. He backed away from the door, slowly at first, then faster, then he turned. And the rage erupted. He walked down the hallway, each step heavier than the one before. His breathing was uneven, shallow, almost panicked. He felt trapped in a house filled with secrets he never asked to inherit, trapped inside a family that didn't know how to love him, trapped inside a world that stole his mother and handed him a legacy of violence instead. By the time he reached the main corridor, everything in him snapped. Luca grabbed the nearest object, a marble sculpture his father imported from Italy, and slammed it against the floor. It shattered into dozens of sharp white pieces. The sound echoed through the mansion like a warning shot. His chest heaved. His vision blurred. His hands stung from the impact. But it didn't stop the fire inside him. He paced forward and swept a row of crystal ornaments off the table with his arm, watching them crash and scatter like broken stars. A framed portrait of his father fell next, and Luca kicked it with so much force the glass cracked and the frame splintered. Somewhere behind him, someone gasped quietly, but nobody approached. Nobody ever approached. Two guards emerged from around the corner, eyes wide as if they'd stumbled upon a wild animal rather than the boss's son. They stood frozen, unsure whether to stop him or pretend they didn't see anything at all. Everyone in the mansion had been told the same thing. Do not interfere when Luca loses control. It was too dangerous, too unpredictable, too risky. So they stayed back. Let him burn alone. But burning alone was the reason Luca was like this in the first place. He stood in the middle of the hallway, chest rising and falling rapidly, pain tightening every part of his face. A lump formed in his throat, thick and suffocating. He hated it. Hated feeling weak. Hated feeling lost. And above everything else, he hated the man whose silence built this rage in him. He kicked a chair, sending it skidding across the marble. Then he punched the wall once, twice, again, until the skin on his knuckles split and warmth trickled down his hand. The guards exchanged nervous glances. One whispered, "Should we call the boss?" The other shook his head sharply. "And tell him what? That his son's breaking the house again. Let him finish." Let him finish. Like Luca was nothing but a problem to wait out. His breath grew louder as his fury choked him from the inside. His eyes stung, but he blinked rapidly, refusing to let anything fall. He didn't cry. He never cried. His father taught him tears made you pray. But tonight, the pressure inside him felt like a dam ready to crack. As he smashed another vase, something shifted at the far end of the hall. Soft footsteps. Slow. Measured. Uneasy but not fearful. He didn't have to look up to know who it was. Ms. Johnson. She stepped forward with the kind of calm no one else in that house possessed. Her hands were steady at her sides. Her eyes locked on him, not with shock, not with fear, but with a kind of heartbreak that made Luca's rage burn hotter. He didn't want her to see him like this. Not her. Anyone else, the guards, the staff, the shadows, fine. Let them judge. Let them whisper. Let them fear him like they feared his father. But not Ms. Johnson. Not the only person in that house who looked at him without expecting something in return. Don't, Luca warned through clenched teeth, voice shaking. Just don't come here. But she didn't stop. He threw his arm toward a lamp as if proving he meant business. The lamp hit the floor and shattered, but Ms. Johnson's expression didn't change. He felt suddenly stripped bare, exposed, raw. Anger wasn't protecting him anymore, not against her eyes. Why are you here? He snapped. Go before I break something else. Still she said nothing. Her silence was the kind that saw him. All the way through. Right down to the fracture lines he'd spent years hiding. Luca staggered back a step, breath stuttering. He hated the way his voice cracked. He hated that his hands shook. He hated that he felt smaller in front of her, not because she intimidated him, but because she understood him. Everything inside him burst at once. She lied to me, he yelled. He lied to me about her, about everything. His chest buckled. His throat tightened. The words felt like glass breaking inside him. He knew, Luca whispered, voice collapsing. He knew someone took her from me, and he didn't tell me. He didn't tell me anything. Ms. Johnson's eyes softened with a sorrow that wasn't pity, it was recognition. Luca wiped his face harshly, furious at himself for the moisture gathering there. I can't, his voice cracked again. I can't breathe in this house. He pressed his palm against his chest, as if trying to hold himself together. It's like I'm drowning and nobody even notices. His knees bent slightly, almost buckling under the weight of everything he'd never said. He squeezed his eyes shut, jaw trembling. Why didn't he tell me? He whispered. Why didn't he trust me with the truth? As Luca finally broke, the guards took a step back, not out of fear this time, but out of reverence. This wasn't violence. This was a boy coming apart. Ms. Johnson took another step, closer now, her voice still unspoken but her presence loud. Luca felt her near him, a warmth in a house built of cold stone. And that was the moment the dam inside him gave way completely. His breath hitched. His shoulders shook. A sound escaped him, small, broken, vulnerable, something he hadn't let himself release since he was a child. Ms. Johnson reached him just as he lifted a trembling fist to hit the wall again, and he stormed deeper into the mansion, feet pounding against imported marble like a warning shot. Every door he passed, he slammed. Every piece of expensive furniture he could reach, he shoved. It was like he needed the world to feel the chaos twisting inside his chest. The guard stayed several steps back, not out of fear of him, but fear of who he belonged to. Nobody touched the Mafia boss's son unless they wanted to disappear by morning. He reached the long hallway leading toward his father's office. Long portraits of past syndicate leaders stared down at him, faces carved in cold confidence, men who ruled with iron fists and unforgiving eyes. He hated every one of them, especially the man whose portrait hung at the very end, his father captured mid-glare, the kind of glare that could freeze a room. He snatched the frame off the wall and hurled it. Glass exploded across the floor. A guard flinched but didn't speak. No one ever stopped the boy when he was like this. Rage was the only language anyone ever allowed him to speak. He grabbed another frame, this one of him as a kid, smiling next to his mother. It was the only photo where he looked human. His hand shook, his breath hitched, then he threw it too. The picture landed face down. He whispered, almost choking, "You promised you'd never leave." But the walls didn't answer. They never did. He kept moving, palm dragging along the wall for balance as anger mixed with something worse. Hurt. Real hurt. The kind that festers when children grow up around power but never around love. When he pushed through the double doors into his father's study, every guard scattered. They knew what this room meant. It was the place where decisions were made, punishments assigned, and lines drawn that nobody ever dared to cross. Except the boy. He snatched the crystal decanter off his father's desk and threw it against the bookshelf. Liquor spilled everywhere as shards rained down. His chest heaved. His eyes burned. Every breath sounded like it came from someone drowning. He grabbed handfuls of files and hurled them across the room, papers fluttering like broken wings. His voice cracked as he shouted at the empty chair behind the desk, as if his father were sitting there. "Why didn't you come home? Why didn't you call? Why is business always more important than me?" His voice echoed, then fell into silence so heavy it smothered him. He sank to his knees, fingers digging into his hair. "Why does everyone I love leave me?" A soft rustle sounded behind him. He stiffened. Someone had dared come close. He spun around, wild-eyed, ready to scream at whoever intruded, but the fire died the moment he saw her standing there. The maid. The black woman with the quiet presence, soft steps, softer eyes, the only person in that mansion who never flinched when he raised his voice. She didn't speak, she didn't run, she didn't call for help. She stepped inside the ruined office like she wasn't stepping into a lion's cage. Her voice was gentle. "You're hurtin', baby." That single sentence cracked something in him. He tried to hold the anger together like armor, but her words crawled right under it. He snapped back, "I'm not hurting, I'm pissed." But even the way he said it sounded childish, like a kid trying to sound big. She didn't judge him, she didn't scold him. She simply looked at him the way no one ever had, with understanding. "You actin' loud," she said softly, "but your heart is cryin' quiet." He looked away sharply. "You don't know anything about me." She took one step closer. He didn't move back. "I know pain when I see it." He swallowed hard, throat burning. "Just leave me alone." But she didn't. Instead, she gently reached down and picked up the photo of him and his mother, the one he'd thrown. Glass glimmered around it, but the picture itself was untouched. She brushed dust off the frame corners and held it like it was something precious. "Your mama?" she asked, though the answer was clear. He nodded once, barely. "She was the only good thing here," he whispered. The woman nodded, and she's gone. He winced like the word itself stabbed him. Nobody here cared, not even him. His eyes shot toward the desk, toward the invisible figure of his father. The woman walked closer, circling the shattered glass carefully until she was right in front of him. Kid or not, Mafia blood or not, he looked impossibly small in that moment, a storm trapped in a child's body. She knelt, lowering herself to his level. "Losing a mama that don't ever stop hurtin', not at your age, not at mine." His breath trembled. For the first time all day, he wasn't yelling, he wasn't throwing, he wasn't trying to destroy something. He was simply breaking. "I try so hard to be strong," he confessed. "But nobody sees me, they only see his son." The woman's eyes softened even more. That's the problem, baby. They see your father's shadow, they don't see your light. He stared at her, stunned. Nobody had ever said that to him. Nobody had ever believed he had a light at all. She held up the picture, letting him really look at it. Your mama loved you. That kind of love don't disappear. He blinked fast, fighting the tears threatening to spill. No, no, I'm fine, I'm not crying. Who said crying ain't fine? His lips pressed tight. A single tear escaped anyway. She didn't reach to wipe it. She didn't make a big deal out of it. She just stayed with him, grounded, steady. The rage that had swallowed the mansion began to loosen its grip on him. But then her voice dropped, more serious than before. What happened tonight? He froze. She watched him with careful eyes. You were already hurtin', but something made it worse. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. His chest rose and fell quickly. It's nothing, just something stupid. Her silence urged him to continue. Finally, he whispered, My father had people here tonight, men who work for him. They were laughing about me, right in front of him. Her jaw clenched just slightly. They called me weak, he continued. Said I'd never be like him, said I was just a mistake he couldn't get rid of. The woman's eyes filled with protective fire. And your father? She asked quietly. The boy's face crumpled. He didn't defend me, he just let them talk. His voice cracked. He let them talk. For the first time, the truth behind his rage was clear. It wasn't disobedience. It wasn't entitlement. It was heartbreak. She placed a slow, steady hand on the center of his back, the kind of touch that didn't demand anything, just reminded him he wasn't alone. And with that small gesture, the tears he had fought so hard to hide finally broke free. He tried to turn away, embarrassed, but she gently stopped him. You don't gotta hide your tears, she whispered. Not from me. He trembled, hands covering his eyes. I hate crying. You don't hate crying, she said. You hate that nobody ever gave you a safe place to do it. The words hit him like truth he had been starving for. The storm inside him began to shift, angry winds turning into something softer, sadder, more vulnerable. Then he whispered something he had never admitted out loud. I just want someone to care. His voice trembled on the last word. Someone. Anyone. And she looked at him with a gentleness that wrapped around him like a blanket. I care, she said quietly. I care right now. His breath hitched, sharp, disbelieving. Nobody had ever said those words to him before. Not like that. Not with truth behind them. A crack appeared in the wall he'd built around his heart. Not shattered. Just cracked. Enough for light to slip through. Then something inside him finally gave way, his chest tightening, his throat closing. He leaned forward, slow, hesitant. And the moment his forehead touched her shoulder, he broke. The boy who had raged through the mansion finally cried. And she held him, steady as a mountain. She didn't rush him, didn't hush him, didn't tell him to be strong. She simply held him until the storm inside him had nothing left to throw. His fists unclenched, his breath steadied. His body, usually so stiff and guarded, softened in her arms like he was finally safe, maybe for the first time. When he pulled back, his eyes were swollen, his cheeks blotched, but the anger had drained from him. All that remained was exhaustion and a quiet kind of shame. He wiped at his face clumsily. You're gonna tell my father, I know you will. She shook her head, calm and sure. Baby, if I wanted to tell him, I'd have called the guards when you broke that first vase. He looked up almost suspicious. Then, why didn't you? Because you weren't destroying the house, she said. You were asking for someone to see you. The words hit him so directly he didn't even blink. He looked away, embarrassed by how true they felt. She stood slowly, offering him her hand. Come on, let's get you out of this room before he comes looking. He didn't take her hand, but he rose and followed her anyway, stepping carefully over scattered glass and spilled liquor. When they stepped into the hallway, the guards straightened, waiting for orders. But the woman gave them a look, calm, firm, unmistakably protective. Clear this mess up, she said. He's done here. A few guards blinked. They weren't used to anyone giving instructions except the boss himself, but something about her tone made them obey without question. The boy noticed it too. Why do they listen to you? He asked quietly as they walked. Respect ain't always loud, she said. Sometimes it's just consistent. They passed long corridors filled with expensive art and cold silence. The mansion was big enough to hide a whole army, but somehow it always felt empty. The boy walked with his hands shoved in his hoodie pockets, eyes down, his usual swagger replaced by something smaller, almost fragile. Finally, she led him into the back kitchen, her world, not his. It was warm from the ovens, smelled like butter and cinnamon, and felt like the only room in the entire mansion that wasn't soaked in power or fear. She gestured toward a chair. Sit. He hesitated. I don't belong in here. She raised an eyebrow. Where you belong is where someone cares for you. He sat. She pulled out a clean towel, dampened it, and gently wiped the dried tear streaks from his cheeks. He flinched at first, not from pain, but from unfamiliar softness. Nobody had cleaned his face since he was a toddler. Nobody had tended to him like he mattered. You don't have to do that, he whispered. Maybe not, she said, but that don't mean I shouldn't. He watched her quietly, studying her the way lost kids study safe adults, as if trying to understand why they exist at all. When she finished, she folded the towel neatly and placed it aside. Tell me what you need. He stared at her hands. I don't know. That's all right, we'll figure it out. For a long moment, they sat in silence, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the distant murmur of guards doing damage control. Then he finally spoke. They're scared of my father, he said. Everyone is. Are you? He swallowed, sometimes. Why? He hesitated, then whispered, because he never gets angry by accident, only on purpose. She understood instantly. Anger that comes in storms is frightening, but anger that comes quiet, planned, controlled, that's terrifying. You scared tonight was the night he aimed it at you, she said gently. He nodded barely. He won't, she continued, not while I'm here. He blinked, startled. You'd stand up to him. In a heartbeat. But I know exactly who he is, her voice stayed calm. But I also know who you are and you're worth standing up for. That simple truth shook him harder than any scream or slap ever had. Then came a knock at the back service door, soft, hesitant. A guard peeked in. Ma'am, the boss just returned. He's asking for the boy. The boy's body tensed instantly. His shoulders rose, his breath sharpened, instinctive fear. The woman stepped forward before he could. Tell him the boy's with me. The guard hesitated. He won't like that. Then he can come talk to me. The guard swallowed, nodded, and left. The boy stared at her like she had grown a second head. You can't talk to him like that. Why not? She asked. Because people who do disappear. She gave him a small, confident smile. Baby, I've been black and outspoken my whole life. Men like him don't scare me. He didn't understand her strength, but he admired it. A few moments later, footsteps approached, heavy ones, the kind that carried authority through the floor. The boy went rigid, every muscle tight like a wire. The Mafia boss entered. Tall, stern, suit still crisp even at midnight. His shadow hit the room before he did. His gaze went straight to his son, then to the woman. Silence stretched, thick and dangerous. You defied my call, the man said, voice low. I did, she replied evenly. And you think you can speak for my son? I'm not speaking for him, she said. I'm protecting him. His jaw ticked almost imperceptibly. From what? From Bane, treated like a soldier when he's still a child. The boy's chest tightened. Nobody had ever challenged his father for him, ever. The boss's eyes narrowed. You're overstepping. And you're overlooking, she said calmly. Your son was hurt tonight. That doesn't excuse the destruction he caused. He wasn't breaking your property, she said, voice steady. He was breaking under pressure. The room went silent again. The boss looked at his son, finally taking in the red eyes, the trembling jaw, the bruised emotion still lingering around him. What happened? He asked him directly. The boy dropped his gaze. Nothing. The woman placed a hand on his shoulder. Baby, tell him. His throat tightened. He shook his head. He won't care. That made the boss's eyes flicker. Hurt, offense, surprise, even he wasn't sure. The woman stepped aside. You need to hear your boy, let him talk. The boy inhaled shakily. Your men, you let them call me weak. They were joking, his father said. It wasn't a joke to me, the boy whispered. Something in the air shifted. The boss wasn't used to being confronted emotionally. He looked startled, like this world, the world of feelings and vulnerability, was foreign territory he had never learned to navigate. You should have defended him, the woman said softly. The boss didn't reply. The boy's voice cracked. You didn't even look at me. His father finally stepped closer, sitting across from him. He wasn't angry. He wasn't towering. He was simply a man, one who had made a mistake bigger than he realized. I didn't know you needed me to, he said quietly. The boy's face fell. I always need you to. The woman watched both of them, seeing the cracks forming, cracks not of destruction but of truth finding a way in. For the first time in years, father and son were facing each other not as mafia royalty, not as boss and heir, but as two wounded humans trying to understand each other. It was fragile, it was rare, it was dangerous, but it was happening. And she was the bridge. The air in the kitchen felt different now, charged, softer, but tense in a new way. The boy avoided his father's eyes, fingertips fidgeting with the edge of the table. The boss glanced at the mess on the counter, then back at his son, as if trying to decode him like a foreign language. He wasn't used to this version of the boy. Not loud, not defiant, just hurting. The woman stood between them, not physically but emotionally, her presence the only thing keeping everything steady. She cleared her throat. Before this house talks about punishment, it needs to talk about pain. The boss turned slightly, giving her a measured look. You speak boldly. Somebody ought to, she replied. This child's been walking around with a broken heart nobody bothered to set. He stiffened, looking away. I don't have a broken heart. She gently tapped his shoulder. Baby, broken hearts don't always bleed, sometimes they just act out. He swallowed hard, blinking fast. His father's voice lowered. Why didn't you come to me? The boy let out a sad laugh. Because you never let me. You're always working, meetings, deals, threats. Everything is important except. He couldn't finish. The woman stepped closer to him. Say it, sweetheart. He whispered it like it burned. Except me. His father went still. Those words hit him harder than any rebellion, any tantrum, any broken vase ever could. For the first time, his expression cracked, not with anger, but with realization. The woman saw it too, a tiny fracture in the armor of a feared man. The boy kept talking, voice trembling. You always tell me one day I'll be strong like you, but maybe I don't want to be you. Silence flooded the room. The father froze, stunned. No one, not even grown men, spoke to him like that. Yet somehow, hearing it from his son didn't ignite fury, it ignited fear. Fear that he had shaped a child into something he never intended. The woman braced for his reaction, but instead of shouting, he sat back slowly, almost deflated. Then who do you want to be? The boy's eyes glistened again. Someone who doesn't have to pretend. A breath. Someone who feels safe. The woman felt her heart clench. Children in powerful homes often carried wounds nobody dared acknowledge. She pulled out a mug, poured warm milk, and placed it in front of the boy. Drink. He did, not because he was thirsty, but because he needed the comfort. His father watched the small gesture, watched how the boy responded, and a hollow regret crossed his face. I didn't know, he said quietly. I thought giving you power would protect you. The boy shook his head. Power doesn't protect me, you do. The woman nodded. Children don't need power, sir, they need presence. The boss leaned back, eyes dropping to the floor. He looked guilty, unfamiliar territory for him. I failed you, he said softly. The boy's lips trembled again. But before the tension could fully push them apart, the woman stepped in, not to take sides, but to keep the fragile bridge from collapsing. Hear me, she said calmly. Your son don't need you to be perfect, he just needs you to show up. Her words wrapped around the room like truth the walls had never heard. But before healing could settle, the kitchen door swung open again, this time harder. A different guard appeared, breathless, urgency in his voice. Sir, your men want you downstairs. They say it's important. The boss's face tightened, business pulling him away, again. The boy stiffened instantly, shoulders rising like a shield forming again. The woman stepped between them. Let the men wait. The guard blinked. Ma'am, with respect, they won't. She turned to the boss. If you walk out now, you tell your boy he ain't a priority. The boy's breath caught. The boss looked torn for the first time in his life. Duty on one side, his son on the other. He stared at the boy, really stared, and something inside him shifted. Not all the way, not enough to erase years of distance, but enough. He turned to the guard. Tell them they'll wait. The guard's eyes widened. Sir, They will wait. The guard left quickly, stunned. The boy's eyes widened too. He had never seen his father put anything on hold for him before. Not business, not men, not the empire. Just him. A shaky breath escaped the boy, something between disbelief and relief. The boss faced him again. You come first, starting now. The woman's lips curved, proud. That's a good beginning. Not a fix, but a beginning. For the next few minutes they sat together, not speaking much, just sharing the same air without tension choking it. The boy sipped his warm milk. The father sat close, hands folded, unsure but trying. Trying mattered. Then the boy asked the question that had shadowed him for years. Did you ever miss Mom? The father froze, pain flickering across his face like lightning. Then he nodded, every day. The boy swallowed, surprised. You never talk about her. It hurts, the father admitted. I didn't want you to see me weak. The woman cut in softly. Grief ain't weakness, it's love that needed somewhere to go. The boss looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. His eyes softened with something like respect. She had walked into the heart of his power, into the vulnerability he spent years burying, and she hadn't bent, flinched, or backed down. The boy shifted in his seat. Sometimes I feel like she'd be disappointed in me. The father shook his head quickly. Your mother would be proud of you, proud of your heart. Tears welled in the boy's eyes again. But this time they weren't from rage or fear. They were from something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The woman placed a hand on his back. There it is, she whispered. That's the truth you've been waiting to hear. The boy leaned into her touch, grounding himself. But then, unexpectedly, the father lowered his voice. I should have said it sooner. Then say it now, she encouraged. He inhaled deeply and looked his son in the eyes. I love you. The boy froze. Shock, disbelief, relief, all fighting at once. He whispered, say it again. I love you, the father repeated firmer. More than business, more than power, more than anything. The boy broke, but gently this time. Tears slid silently, not from a storm, but from finally being seen. The woman wrapped an arm around him. See, baby, even the hardest men got soft spots. The boss's eyes glistened too, barely, but enough. The woman took a small step back, letting them sit in the truth of each other. A fragile peace settled over them, imperfect, tender, real. But under that peace, a new thread began forming, one that would lead to the story's climax. Because while one wound was beginning to heal, another was waiting downstairs. A threat neither father nor son saw coming. And the woman, the quiet backbone of this mansion, would be the one forced to face it first. Downstairs, the mansion's lower level pulsed with low voices, shifting footsteps, and the quiet electricity of men who lived in shadows. Whatever they were discussing wasn't normal business. It had weight, urgency, maybe even danger. But upstairs in the quiet back kitchen, a fragile peace, new, trembling, but real, was forming between father and son. The boy leaned against the warm wooden counter, his eyes softer than the man had ever seen. The father watched him with a strange mixture of regret and determination, as if trying to memorize him or rebuild what he had once destroyed. And the woman, strong, steady, with eyes that saw deeper than anyone wanted to admit, moved quietly between them, holding the moment together with her presence. She could feel it, though. Something in the house had shifted. A storm hadn't passed, it had only paused. The boy's father exhaled deeply, like he was preparing to speak again, but before he could, footsteps pounded up the stairs, fast, unsteady, urgent. The door burst open. One of the father's top lieutenants stepped inside, face pale, chest heaving. He looked like he'd been wrestling with weather to interrupt a sacred moment. Sir, you need to come, now. The father straightened, instantly alert. What is it? It's the Kresnik family, the man said, voice low. They're here in our basement. The boy stiffened. Even he knew that name, one of the rival families his father had spent years trying to outmaneuver. Ruthless, dangerous, known for crossing lines no one else would. His father's tone sharpened. Are they here for business? The lieutenant shook his head. No, they came uninvited. A chill ran through the room. The woman's eyes narrowed. Uninvited means trouble. The man swallowed. They say they came to talk, but they're armed. The father's jaw clenched. The air around him changed. His presence grew colder, sharper. The careful tenderness he had shown minutes earlier slid back behind the mask he wore as a leader. But this time the boy felt it. He sensed the shift, not anger at him, but fear for what lay below. The boy whispered, "Dad, don't go down there alone." The father turned to him, and for a moment the mask cracked. "I have to." The woman stepped forward. "Then you're not going alone." Her voice left no room for debate. He stared at her, surprised, maybe even impressed. "This isn't your fight." She lifted her chin. "Tonight that boy cried in my arms and you listened to him because I stood beside him. So yeah, this is my fight." Her words sat heavy between them. The boy grabbed her hand. "You don't have to." She squeezed his fingers. "Baby, I've been protecting children my whole life, some with guns around them, some with nothing but fear. I ain't stopping now." His father watched the exchange, something like gratitude flickering across his face. Then he nodded. "Stay behind me, both of you." For the first time, it wasn't a command, it was protection. They moved through the mansion quickly, guards falling into formation as they passed. Tension radiated off the walls. Even the chandeliers seemed to tremble with anticipation. The deeper they walked into the basement level, the colder the air felt. The hallways narrowed. The lighting dimmed. The house's elegant luxury gave way to steel doors and concrete, places built not for guests, but for negotiations that never made the news. At the final turn, the boss stopped and faced his son. "You stay behind me," he said, voice low but firm. "If anything goes wrong, you run upstairs with her, understand?" The boy didn't argue, not out of fear, but because his father had said with her, not alone. It meant he trusted her, trusted the connection she had built. They stepped into the large, dim-lit basement hall. And the Kresnik family was already there. 4 men stood in the center, broad, muscular, dressed in dark coats. Their faces were expressionless, but their eyes scanned everything like predators choosing what to bite first. One man, their leader, smirked when he saw the father enter. "Well, well," he said, "we didn't expect you to come down personally." The father's voice dropped to an icy calm. "You walk into my home armed, and you expect me to send someone else." The leader laughed. "Fair enough." The woman positioned herself slightly in front of the boy, not obvious, but protective. The Kresnik leader's eyes slid to the boy. "We've heard you weren't doing too well tonight." The boy stiffened. The father moved slightly forward, blocking their view. "You don't speak about him." Oh, the rival boss tilted his head. "So now the son matters." The father's jaw tightened. The woman felt the shift, small but powerful. This wasn't about business anymore. It was about respect. It was about the raw nerve that had been exposed upstairs. "What do you want?" the father asked, cutting through the tension. "A conversation," the rival man said. "A trade, perhaps." The boy felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Trades in this world were never simple, never safe. The woman's hand found the small of his back, steadying him. The rival boss stepped closer. "We lost something valuable recently, a shipment that disappeared, and we think someone in your organization stole it." "That's a lie," the father snapped. "Maybe," the rival man said, "or maybe it's just inconvenient truth." Before the father could respond, one of the Kresnik men shifted. Just a step, but enough for the woman to see the outline beneath his jacket. "A gun." Her breath caught. The father noticed too, his tone sharpened. "If you touch anything in this house." The rival leader smiled. "Relax, we're only here to talk." Then he tilted his head. "Though it's interesting, your son looks shaken. Rough night." Those words hit the boy like a slap. The father stepped forward, voice cold enough to crack stone. "You don't talk to him, you don't look at him, and if you mention him again." The rival boss raised both hands mockingly. "Oh, so the mighty lion finally learned how to protect his cub." The woman shifted her stance, ready. and the boy felt something inside him twist, anger, shame, but also a strange spark of pride. His father was standing up for him. Finally, the rival boss's smirk faded. "We want compensation." "You'll get nothing," the father said. "Then we take what we need." Everything erupted at once. One of the Kresnik men reached for his weapon. The boy gasped. The woman grabbed his shoulders and shoved him behind a pillar just as. The father moved faster than anyone expected. He grabbed the rival man by the collar and slammed him into the wall. "You try to threaten my son in my own house." The other Kresnik men drew their weapons. Guards surged in from both sides. The basement exploded into chaos, shouts, movement, desperation. The woman pulled the boy into a corner, shielding him with her whole body. "Stay with me," she ordered. He clutched her arm, terrified. "He's going to get hurt." "Your father's been fighting his whole life," she said. "He knows what he's doing." A guard was thrown across the room, crashing into crates. A Kresnik man tackled another guard. Weapons were raised, fists thrown. The father and the rival leader were locked in a brutal struggle, one fueled by years of tension, and tonight's fragile revelation. The woman looked around, searching for anything that could turn the tide. Then her eyes landed on the boy's face, glassy with fear. "No," he whispered, "I can't lose him too." Her heart squeezed. She squeezed his shoulders. "Baby, you're not losing nobody tonight." She stepped out from behind the pillar. He grabbed her arm. "No, don't go." But she looked him in the eyes, steady and unshakable. "You stay here, I'll be right in front of you." Then she walked into the chaos. She moved like someone who understood danger deeply, but refused to fear it. She shouted loud enough for both men to hear. "Stop!" Everyone froze, a split second, but enough. She faced the rival leader first. "You bring guns into a home with a child, you call yourself men." The Kresnik man blinked, thrown off by her boldness. Then she turned to the father. "And you, this ain't strength, this is old wounds fighting each other." The father hesitated, just enough. Then she stepped fully between them. Her voice dropped, raw with truth. "Look at your son." Both men turned. The boy stood behind the pillar, chest shaking, eyes terrified, vulnerable in a way neither Mafia leader had ever witnessed. The rival boss stared, uneasy. The father stepped closer to his son, something cracking open inside him. He lowered his hands, fists unclenching. "This ends now," the woman declared. "Take your men, take your lies, and get out of this house." The rival leader scowled. "You're giving orders now." She didn't flinch. "Someone has to." He looked at the father. "You let a maid speak for you." The father's voice was quiet but deadly. "She speaks because she's right." Stunned silence. The rival leader's eyes flicked between them, between the woman's unwavering stance and the father's newfound resolve. Then he spat on the concrete, angry but beaten. "We'll finish this another day." The Kresnik men withdrew slowly, eyes lingering but weapons lowering. Moments later, they were gone. The basement doors slammed behind them. Silence collapsed onto the room like a wave. The father turned to the woman, chest still heaving. "You saved us." She shook her head. "No, I just reminded you what you were fighting for." Then the boy ran to his father, clinging to him, not out of fear but out of something deeper. And the father wrapped his arms around him for the first time in years, holding him tightly. "Are you all right?" he whispered. "I thought I'd lose you," the boy cried. "You won't," the father said, voice trembling. "Not again, not ever." The woman watched them, her eyes softening. Tonight had changed the house. Tonight had changed all of them. But the story wasn't finished. There was still a final truth waiting upstairs. And a healing no one expected. The night settled over the Romano mansion like a blanket that hadn't been used in years. Soft, quiet, almost gentle. For the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel like a cage built from secrets and polished stone. It felt like a place learning how to breathe again. Luca sat on the edge of the guest room bed, shoulders loose, breath steady. His eyes were still swollen from crying, but there was a softness in them now, the kind that comes after a storm finally empties itself. Althea sat beside him, not hovering, not instructing, just being there. The same steady presence she had held onto all those years. You okay now, baby? She asked, her voice like warm cloth against a bruise. Luca nodded slowly, his hair falling over his eyes. I think so. He wasn't used to saying things like that. He wasn't used to being honest about how he felt. He wasn't used to having someone who didn't want anything from him, not fear, not control, not obedience, just truth. Althea reached for the ice pack beside her and gently pressed it against the swelling on his knuckles. He winced but didn't pull away. She smiled softly. You got a lot of hurt in you, she whispered. But hurt don't make you broken, hurt just means you still feel. Luca let out a breath that trembled at the edges. I don't want to be like my father. I know you don't. He'd kill me if he saw me cry. He don't need to see, she answered. And even if he did, tears ain't weakness. They're proof you're human in a house that forgot what humanity is. Luca looked at her then, really looked, and something inside him cracked open, not painfully this time, but gently, like a door he never knew was locked. Downstairs, for the first time in hours, the mansion was silent. The guards whispered among themselves, confused. They had seen the boy rage, break, collapse, and then vanish into a quiet room with the one woman they had all underestimated. Some of them wondered if she had drugged him. Others whispered that she knew some secret trick. But none of them understood the truth. She didn't calm him. She allowed him to feel. She didn't tame the storm. She gave it somewhere safe to fall. Later, when the moon had climbed halfway across the sky, Althea stood up. I should get back to the laundry, she said softly. Luca reached for her hand, not grabbing, just holding it for a moment so she knew he didn't want her to go. Thank you, he whispered. She brushed his cheek with her thumb, not wiping tears, just giving his face something it had been missing all these years, a touch without expectation. You're welcome, baby. She headed toward the door, but before she left, she turned back. You don't have to carry everything alone, not anymore. The door closed with a softness that didn't match this house's history. But Luca wasn't alone for long. An hour later, footsteps echoed down the hallway, heavy, powerful, deliberate. The kind of walk a man used when he wanted everyone to know he was in control. Don Romano had arrived. The guards straightened instantly. No one spoke when the boss returned from his meeting early, especially when word had already traveled that the mansion had nearly been torn apart in a rage. The boss entered the guest hallway, his eyes landing instantly on the shattered vase pieces still scattered along the floor. His jaw tightened, not because of the damage, but because he recognized the rage behind it, the same rage he had lived with for decades. He pushed open the guest room door without knocking. Luca looked up from the bed, surprised, tense for a moment, but not afraid, not like before. Don Romano's eyes scanned him, the swollen eyelids, the tense shoulders, the trembling breath that still lingered. He took in all of it but didn't comment. You caused a mess, the boss said quietly. I know. You break things, you pay for them. I know. There was a pause, not hostile, not heavy, just unfamiliar, like two men standing on ground neither of them had ever walked before. The boss's eyes drifted toward Luca's hands. You hurt yourself. A little. Another pause. You handled it alone. Luca shook his head. She helped me. The boss didn't ask who. He already knew. The mansion wasn't big enough to hide miracles. Don Romano stepped inside and closed the door. His voice dropped into a tone Luca hadn't heard from him since childhood, not warm but not cold either. Something in between, something human. When I was your age, he said, I didn't have anyone to stop me, no one to tell me it was okay to feel anything other than anger. Luca watched him carefully. I don't want you to end up like that, the boss continued, breaking things until there's nothing left to break. It wasn't an apology, it wasn't affection, but it was something Luca had never received, acknowledgement. Luca swallowed, then teach me something different. That hit the boss harder than he expected. His expression didn't change, but his eyes did, just barely, just enough to show something cracking behind them. I don't know how, he admitted. And that was the closest thing to vulnerability Luca had ever seen from him. There was another quiet beat, not uncomfortable, just new. Maybe, Luca said softly, we learned, both of us. The older man looked at him, studying him the way he studied men before deciding whether to trust them with his life. Then he nodded once. We'll try. For a moment they sat in silence again, not father and son, not boss and heir, just two wounded people learning how to exist without armor. The boss stood after a moment and opened the door to leave, but before he stepped out, he paused. "Tell the maid to take the morning off," he said quietly, "and thank her for me." Luca's chest tightened, not from anger, not from fear, but from something warm he didn't have a name for yet. "I will." When the boss left, Luca leaned back in the bed, staring at the ceiling. The mansion felt different now, not fixed, not healed, but shifting, opening, allowing light to slip through the cracks. Downstairs, Althea folded towels with the same patience she carried through life. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Some days, quiet victories mattered more than loud ones. And tonight, something had changed in that house. Not because rage had stopped, but because love, the kind built on truth, not blood, had finally been allowed to enter. Some people grow up thinking strength means silence. That toughness is measured by how little you cry, how little you feel, how much you can endure alone. Some houses are built of stone, power, and fear, and children inside them learn early that showing pain is weakness. But the truth is different. Strength isn't hiding behind anger. Strength isn't breaking vases or shouting until the walls shake. True strength is letting someone in. True strength is saying, "I am hurt, I am scared, I am human," and trusting that someone will stay anyway. Luca's story isn't just about rage or loss. It's about the power of being seen, the power of being embraced when everything in you screams to push people away. It's about the courage it takes to let your tears fall, even in a house where showing emotion feels dangerous. And it's about the quiet heroes, the ones who don't wear suits or carry weapons, the ones who stand in the storm not to fight for themselves, but to make sure someone else can survive it. Sometimes the bravest acts are not the loudest. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who open their hearts when the world teaches them to close it. The woman in Luca's life didn't destroy the rival family. She didn't confront every enemy with guns or power. She did something harder. She gave a boy permission to be vulnerable. She reminded a father that love matters more than control. And she showed a family that the walls we build around our hearts can come down, brick by brick, if someone cares enough to hold the space while we crumble. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear that showing emotion doesn't make you weak. That tears are proof of life. That strength is human, not fear. And that sometimes one act of kindness can change an entire house, an entire family, an entire future. Because rage may break you, but love, patient, honest, steady love can heal you.